My quest to make an extra sour loaf of sourdough bread has led me to consider one ingredient that I never thought I would actually put into my sourdough: citric acid. Citric acid is an additive that you can commonly find in supermarket breads that are labeled as sourdough, even though they don't contain any real sourdough starter. Brands try to imitate the acidic flavor that sourdough bread sometimes has by adding a small amount of this potently sour white powder. This is definitely an unnatural additive, but a surprising number of people have told me that they use it, so I figured I'd give citric acid a try and see if it has any place in the home baker's kitchen. To do a taste test, I made 2 almost identical loaves of sourdough bread, one using only flour, water, salt, and starter, and then to the other loaf I added a small amount of citric acid. The ingredients for the control loaf are here on the screen right now, and then for the citric acid loaf I added just 1/8 of a teaspoon of citric acid. I've heard that a 1/4 teaspoon per loaf is a good starting place, and since this is a half-size loaf of bread, I went with 1/8 of a teaspoon. After mixing the 2 doughs thoroughly, I kept them on the counter to rest for 30 minutes. But first, I covered the bowls with these great airtight lids that I got from Cooey Housewares. These lids can create an airtight seal on almost any size mixing bowl, and they come in a bunch of different sizes from the sponsor of today's video. Cooey Housewares is an online retailer of quality kitchen and home goods products. Their family-run business is based out of Muskegon, Michigan, and they want to offer a 10% discount on all of their products to Grant Bakes viewers. So if you're interested in the airtight lids that I'm using in this video, or any of the other kitchen tools on their website, go ahead and go to cooeyhousewares.com and use the code GRANTBAKES10 at checkout for 10% off. You can also get the discount by clicking on the link in the description below. Thank you to Cooey Housewares for sponsoring today's video. After the 30-minute rest, I gave each of the doughs 3 sets of stretch and folds with a half-hour rest in between each set. Then I flipped the doughs over, covered them up, and let them bulk ferment for 6 hours at room temperature, which was around 68 degrees Fahrenheit for me on this particular day. 6 hours later, the doughs were jiggly, risen, and ready to shape. So I pre-shaped each dough into a ball, and I let them bench rest on the counter at room temperature for about 30 minutes. And then I dusted the tops with flour, shaped each dough into an oval batard, and then I transferred each of them into a Banneton basket for the final proof. I let the doughs rise for 1 hour at room temperature to get a head start on proofing, and then before moving them to the fridge, I marked the citric acid loaf with a C so that I wouldn't get them confused, and I moved the 2 into the refrigerator to proof in the cold environment for about 12 hours. Also, I have a quick question for you off topic. Apples in the fridge, yes or no? Let me know what you think. Then the next day, I pulled the doughs out of the fridge, transferred them onto my Challenger bread pan base that I had been preheating to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. I scored the doughs and baked them for 20 minutes with the lid on. 20 minutes later, I removed the lid to release the steam, then I continued baking for another 20 minutes with the lid off. After that, I transferred the doughs to a wire rack and I separated them because they had baked together just a little bit, and I let them cool down for over an hour to prepare for the taste test. Here we have the regular loaf on the left, the citric acid loaf on the right. Let's see if this additive is worth using as far as flavor goes. Visually, what I noticed first was that both of these loaves were a little more flat than usual. That possibly is because I let them bulk ferment a little bit too long. Either way, both loaves followed the exact same process. The only difference was the addition of citric acid to this loaf right here. So if there is a flavor difference in these 2 breads, I should be able to know that it's probably because of the citric acid. Okay, here's the taste test. We're going with the regular sourdough versus the one with citric acid. Just upon smell, I'm really not noticing much difference whatsoever, and I'm wondering if I should have put more citric acid in this, if it was even enough. But let's find out. Get a little bit of the crumb. It's great bread. I even got a little bit of a sour note kind of on the end, almost like an aftertaste of just a little bit of acid or sourness. So let's see what this one tastes like with the addition of the citric acid. Homemade fake sourdough. That's really good too. I wish I would have added more because I can tell it's giving it a different flavor. There's almost a little bit of sourness right when I take the first bite that I didn't notice in the first loaf, and I should have doubled the citric acid. I bet if I would have doubled the citric acid that you'd really notice the sour flavor a lot more. I think I have to try it with twice the amount of citric acid. Give me 1 minute. Okay, it's the next day, and I just made a third loaf of bread, this one with 3 times the amount of citric acid as the last loaf. For yesterday's loaf, I used 1/8 of a teaspoon of citric acid. This time, I put 3/8 teaspoons of citric acid into this loaf. I know that's going to drive the metric people crazy, but 3/8 of a teaspoon. I'm sorry for the conversion. For one, this loaf was really flat, as you can see. It could be something to do with the acid breaking down the gluten and the loaf not being able to hold together as well. I really don't want to say one way or the other because I'm not sure scientifically if that's what happened, but it's a really flat loaf. Smells very sour in a way that my sourdough bread usually doesn't smell. So I'm hoping the taste is different too. Yeah, that's more sour. That's a lot more sour. It's not overwhelming. It's not like a warhead candy or anything, but there's definitely a sour flavor there that I don't usually get. I would almost say I could add more citric acid, but I don't want to just because the dough acted so differently and the loaf ended up so flat. So, just personally, I wouldn't want to add any more to my loaf because I like how it tastes in the first place. But if you're looking to add a sour punch to your sourdough bread and you don't mind adding additives that might be unnatural, go with citric acid. But my quest isn't over. I'm still looking for a natural way to make an extra sour loaf of sourdough bread, so stay tuned. Thanks again to Cooey Housewares for sponsoring today's video. You can get 10% off of any of their kitchen and home good products using my link in the description below. I'm having way too much fun with these. See you in the next video.